shrine. Put the focus, I'm not in the shrine. Yeah. I am. Oh, you said that. I don't even know. Yeah, listen, you can just stand there. He's the most important guy.
Once they wanted to see it. Were you there? Yes, I reckon it.
The last one?
Yeah, I didn't get it. Say again, sorry?
There was an area for children.
Let me just check with Shafi's.
It's interesting in terms of response.
There's plenty of space there. There will be. It's got activities and stuff.
Shanell came out.
How are you?
Good, how are you?
Oh, the actors. I won't get completely tan.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you. We're back to the green.
Two minutes, sorry.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and good evening. My name is Saeed Shafi. I'm the chair and the trustee of Cann Masjid, which is called Cann Deen and Education Trust, or we say name it Cann Masjid. We'll start off the Quran recitation. Now there is a young gentleman here, his name is Ishaq. He'll recite the Quran. We start any event in the masjid or outside the masjid with the Quran recitation. Quran is our most holy book. So yes, Ishaq.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إذا جاء نصر الله والفتح أرأيت الناس يدخلون في دين الله أفواجا فسبح بحمد ربك واستغفر إنه كان توابا صدق الله العظيم.
Thank you. First and foremost, I'd like to welcome and thanks for attending everyone from the masjid. Obviously this hosting we have organized very last minute. Tomorrow is the election, very last minute. The reason being is we wanted to know our candidates and also local issues, and if you have any other issues to discuss, and get to know your candidates and make your mind up who you need to vote. Okay? Myself, Saeed Shafi, as I explained, and this is Brother Shiraz. He's the chair and trustee of Masjid al-Tawheed, which is in Leyton. So both of us will be hosting the event, inshallah. I'd like to say health and safety. So this is the fire exit. Anytime any emergency, it's a fire exit. 2 toilets and the washing facility on your left. See, there's another door number 6. You can use it anytime to exit. The views expressed by the candidates and the audience members are not the views of Cann Education Trust, Cann Masjid, or Brother Shiraz or myself. We are simply here to give you a voice and remain impartial. It is a chance for you to talk directly to the potential candidates who will be the next MP in Leyton Wanstead Constituency. Naturally, there will be answers you may not be satisfied with. However, you will leave more informed about each candidate than you were when you arrived. This is a masjid, so I therefore ask you to respect the etiquettes of the mosque. So request the audience, please listen to the candidates politely, gently. Just to mindful, this is a mosque. We don't want to raise our voice which may be against the etiquette of the mosque. This is a selective hustings. This means we reached out all the major candidates in the area. The following were invited: Kelvin Bailey, Labour; Charlotte, Lafferty, Green Party. There's sorry.
Green Party Council.
Green Party, yeah. Shanell Johnson, Independent; Gloria Croxall from Conservative; and Tara Copeland from Liberal Democrat. Conservative and Green, they have cancelled at the last minute. Okay, so now I'm going to ask for the Shiraz to carry on.
Assalamualaikum, all welcome this evening. Okay, I'm gonna get straight into it because we've not got much time. We've got a hard finish at 9:30 p.m. followed by prayers at 9:35. If you just allow me 2-3 minutes, I'm just going to explain the format and the questioning and how it's going to work this evening. So the format, it's a question time format. So we're going to have members of the audience standing up asking questions. Each candidate will be given 2 minutes to answer the questions. Candidates should answer the questions directly and concisely within this time. If the answer is not clear, the chair may prompt a candidate to give a clearer answer for the question. We do have a timekeeper, and the candidates and timekeeper understand each other, so they'll be keeping to time hopefully. For the candidates, in order for the candidates to answer your questions directly and concisely, you must ask the questions directly and concisely. Of course, add some context to it if you like, but the questions should be clear and direct so we can answer them and they can get the right answer. The questions are in 2 sections. So section number 1 will be the pre-submitted questions. When the messages and the advertising went out, we did offer people to submit questions. We've had them, and we've been inundated actually. But me and Shafi did decide, rather than just sticking to the submitted questions only, if members of the public have turned up, we should afford the respect to give a section where you can stand and ask questions and themes which may not be discussed in the pre-submitted questions. So, as I said, we've got about 90 minutes to go through this. I'll try getting it through as quick as possible. The more questions, the better. We'll start with the pre-submitted questions, but before that, I'll hand back over to Brother Shafi. He'll introduce each candidate. Each candidate will have an introduction of 3 minutes to present themselves to kick it off. So, you can start with. So actually, I'll introduce Tara. So, Tara, thank you very much for attending. Liberal Democrat, your 3 minutes starts now.
Hi everybody, my name is Tara Copeland and I'm here representing the Liberal Democrats, and I'm hoping to be your parliamentary member of parliament for Leyton Wanstead come tomorrow. So I'm a Liberal Democrat because I believe in a fair, free and open society. And what this means to me is that it means that everybody should be able to afford a home in a safe and clean neighborhood, that everybody should have access to a clean and healthy natural environment, that every child should have the opportunity to go to a good school where they then are able to fulfill their potential for the future. And it also means that everybody has access to good quality healthcare when they need it. So I have been a part of the Leyton Wanstead community for the last 3 years. I started my journey in the area as the captain for Leyton Orient Women's Football Club. And through them, I did a lot of work with the Leyton Orient Trust, visiting schools, visiting other community hubs, working a lot with children, teaching them the importance of education, health, and of course, football and fitness. And then through that, I started getting active with the local Liberal Democrat team, and they're a great group of people, and it's been really, really wonderful working with them, knocking on your doors and talking to you about the issues that are so important to you. Things like the slowed, not even slowed development, just the lack of development for Whipps Cross Hospital. The crime that is making you feel unsafe on your streets, and the noise and air pollution being caused by City Airport flight paths out of Edmonton incinerator. The reality is that the Liberal Democrats here, we're working for you all the time, and you have unfortunately been let down by a Conservative government that is more focused on dividing the country rather than making things work for people and uniting us all together. And you've also been let down by a Labour Council and Labour MP who are just not listening to you anymore. One of the things that I hear the most is that you feel that he's been absent and that you're not being listened to. And the reality is that I'm here to hopefully change that, because you deserve better and I want to do and be better for you. So I'm really looking forward to answering your questions tonight. And I also just want to thank you all for being here, because it should be an absolutely wonderful evening. So thanks.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you. I'd like to then next welcome Shanell Johnson, independent candidate. Shanell.
Thank you. You'll have to excuse me for not standing. I hurt my foot while canvassing, so I'm actually quite relieved that I don't have to keep getting up and down on this one. My name's Shanell Johnson, and I just want to echo exactly what Tara said, but pick it up from the point about not listening. My approach is very different. Places and spaces, just like you're here to talk about the issues that are affecting us, which are many. And I can say, hands down, that nobody has been listening. And I'm saying that from a position of knowing, also having sat in the local council and seen firsthand our leaders not paying any attention, but to the point where they're holding us in so much contempt that it actually hurts, because we should be listened to. And some of the issues, I can give you an example of the Wanstead Youth Centre. So many people campaigned, slept out overnight, signed petitions, rallied around and got to the council day in, day out, and they still were not listening. They closed spaces and places that our young people need. How are we supposed to invest in their future if we're in a position of power currently with a current Labour-led council that isn't even listening? So imagine what the future looks like when you then potentially have a Labour in government. What you're seeing now is an example of what's to come. And what's to come is la 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 la, we'll do what we want anyway. It's just not good enough. And that's been my standpoint while I've been in the council, which is how I became an independent. I saw with my own eyes things were not working. And it got to a point in December, which the absolute cherry on the cake nationally, with everything that was happening in Gaza, I said I cannot align myself with this party any longer. And that's where I'll leave it.
Thank you, Shanell. Calvin.
Hello, good evening. My name is Calvin Bailey, and I'm honoured to be the Labour Party. I was born in Zambia, I was raised here. It's taken me from working class upbringings through a comprehensive school education to a 24-year Royal Air Force career, where I was renowned for my humanitarian operations and leading the evacuation of Kabul. It's these experiences that have drawn me into politics. It's these experiences that make me proud to be part of a Labour Party that will bring about change to undo the damage of 14 years of Conservative government. Throughout this campaign, I have pledged, firstly, to be active and present. I will support local initiatives, work with the local councils and councillors, some of whom are here today, to address the challenges that you face. Secondly, I'm committed to ensuring that Whipps Cross Hospital is built and equipped to meet our community's needs. Lastly, I'm passionate about creating opportunities for young people. They deserve access to education, housing and employment, and I'm determined to ensure that they have the opportunity to walk down paths such as the one that I've walked down myself. However, the reason why we are here tonight is because politicians and politics have failed you. The handling of a number of issues has left you feeling unrepresented. I understand. Misrepresented an issue on Bangladeshi immigration. I spoke to my party and I expressed my deep upset. I then spoke to your community to make sure that that was understood. My party listened and Sakir issued an apology. I've not been a politician before, but I am a leader who will listen. We will not always agree, but I will represent your views. As a young mixed-race man, I know the struggle of not being heard. Tonight, I'm not here to win votes, I'm here to listen. I'm here to start a journey of repair. Thank you.
Thank you, Calvin. Okay, so we're going to go straight into section 1. I'll just remind you, section 1 are the pre-submitted questions that have come in. So they've come in to us, we've sorted through them, sifted through them. We're not able to get everybody to talk about their pre-submitted questions, but we've grouped together the themes and we've given the chance to the person the appropriate question we felt was necessary. So we're going to begin by asking Sister Sajda, please, if you can stand. Are you here? Yes, please.
Yes, so I have a question. I want to know, what are your plans to improve opportunities for young people in Leyton and Wanstead?
So I'll repeat the question for the audience. What are your plans to improve opportunities for young people in Leyton and Wanstead? I'll start with Tara, please.
Thanks. So, I mean, one of the key things which Shanell had touched on previously was the closure of Wanstead Youth Centre. Spaces like that are so important for young people. They're places where they can gather, they're places where they can work in the community together, meet their friends and develop new skills, and it's the fact that these are closing down is just disgraceful. So we need to be making sure that we have these spaces, that we're making sure that we're properly funding and creating them. It also comes down to schools, making sure that there's good opportunities within schools, making sure that teachers are feeling like they're valued and are able to work in a good environment, making sure that they're able to provide a solid education for children. It's really just making sure that kids feel safe in all of these spaces. And just making sure that then through this they'll have the opportunities, whichever kind of opportunities they want for their post-education, whether that's more apprenticeships, which is something that we'd be looking to expand, or whether that's going to university and taking up a degree. It's making sure that kids are able to see all of their options for these kind of opportunities. So that's sort of that we look to do that in this community.
Thank you. Yes?
Thank you. Thanks for your question. We held 3 assemblies in the last couple of weeks, and this has come up time and time again. So I'm just going to recount what some of the people from the community have said. In the assembly we had last night, people asked for nursery spaces. Now, I know you said young children, but the reason why I'm bringing it back to nursery places is because it enables a lot more spaces and places for young people, younger people. And they also pointed to the fact that within the education system, there wasn't enough provision for students that had special educational needs. That was also pointed to. And also that teachers weren't getting supported well enough within schools. So there wasn't enough TA support within the schools. There also wasn't enough pay for certain teachers. Teaching wasn't now looking like a profession that people wanted to go into, which then has a knock-on effect to students. Because if students are not being taught by inspiring teachers, guess what happens? They then don't feel inspired. But to bring it right back to young people themselves, I was a young person that benefited significantly from having a local youth centre. In fact, I can credit my local youth centre with me being here today, because if it hadn't been for the investment that my local youth centre put into me, I wouldn't be public speaking, because I was a student that didn't do very well in school. So you need to be able to close that safety net and provide places and spaces where young people can go, they can feel free, and they can carry on being the best that they can be. And that's what we do as a community. So we can't forget the provision for football, the provision for cricket, all of the other additional provisions that there are that young people have, that we provide. And that's what we've got to take account of.
Thank you, Shanell. Kelly.
Thank you for your question, which points straight to my last of my three pledges. And in three parts, education, housing and employment were the three provisos. But it's important to say before I start anything that we will only promise things that we can actually deliver. So starting with education, it's fairly central to the manifesto. Generating an additional £1.6 billion through taxation on private schools so that we can have 6,500 new teachers. We know that there is a need for specialist teachers to support the development of children. We know there's an increase in mental health and some of the challenges that children face within school, and those are things that need to be addressed and provision. Housing. We all know that there is a problem with housing here. We all know that there is also a problem with space here. It's something that I am going to be challenged with over the next couple of months myself, but today two of your councillors sat in the audience were discussing how we have received a grant from the GLA of about £500 million. We've got to go and find another £500 million to make sure that we can do the developments on some of the inadequate housing that is already here before we can even get to the starting line for where we can provide or allow your children to actually remain in the borough and the constituency that they grew up. The last thing is employment. Fundamental to our manifesto is being able to create a secure economy on which we have a foundation of green jobs. There's a pledge to 6,500 green jobs, and those jobs should be jobs that are accessed by people in our community and not just outside of London. And we need to make sure there's adequate pathways, like I said, for our children, the path I walked on myself, so that they can make their ways into those jobs.
Thank you. Thank you. We have Sister Javin. Sister Javin.
Good evening, panel. Thank you for attending. My question has gone from local to international issues. Do you believe Israel is committing genocide and war crimes? Will you condemn the death and injury of 150,000 people and the illegal occupation of Palestine?
Thank you. I'll just repeat that for the audience. Question is, do you believe Israel is committing genocide and war crimes? Will you condemn the death and injury of 150,000 people and the illegal occupation of Palestinian land? We'll start here with Shanell first, please.
So I took in December to actually move away from the Labour Party for the exact reason that you stated. Now, that was a big step because my family has been Labour through and through. But when I saw that the party that I represented no longer represented my views, and I don't believe that we should be killing innocents, I could no longer be a part of that party. So this is partly why I'm sat in front of you today as an independent, because I already took the stand and I will continue to take the stand because we need peace. We cannot be simultaneously preparing for war and peace at the same time. It just doesn't work. You cannot do that. Unless we are on a platform for peace, and that is peace everywhere, we cannot be on a footing for war. And that's my firm belief. And I will continue to champion that for as long as I can.
We'll ask Mr. Kelvin.
Thank you. So this is an important question, and it's what I alluded to right at the beginning. Shanell and I agreed on many things. The first thing that I absolutely must separate ourselves from is that we are not killing innocents. We in this room are not killing innocents. The actions.
Before you answer, guys, if we can,
please,
sorry,
if you can let
it is important. Yeah, it's important that we separate that because that is quite fundamental before we start. This is not about sides. Right at the beginning, it's important for us to say this is not about sides. And where we both agree, this is fundamentally about peace. And I've been quite open and been very open that there are a number of things that we need to recognise to find our way into a position of peace, come what may, regardless of what happened on October the 7th. For peace, we must first recognise a viable Palestinian state. And we also must make sure that that exists or coexists with an Israel. This is the foundation and fundamental to any peace process.
So that's according to you.
Absolutely.
That's according to you.
We must have.
Please, my brother, please.
We must have. We'll come back to it after. We'll come back to it after.
Sir,
please.
brother, can you just let him finish, please?
Ask the question.
We
Brother,
must.
please.
We
Let him
must.
answer the question, please.
We must also have an immediate ceasefire
But you didn't call for that in
and
the
a
parliament.
release for all hostages, and this we've called for. It's in the manifesto.
Did Keir Starmer call for it?
We have also called for a reinstatement of UNRWA and for unfettered access to aid. This we have done and we will pursue. We need a Palestinian visa scheme. I'll continue if you don't mind. We need a Palestinian visa scheme that is comparable to the schemes in place with Ukraine and Hong Kong, and this we have done. And we will support the rules-based international order, including the ICJ and the ICC applications for arrest warrants, and they should be issued to both Israeli leaders and Hamas leaders, and this we have done and will do. We will review and make transparent all weapons licenses, arrangements, and ensure that they are not complicit in acts determined by the international court.
Thank you, Calvin. That's your time up. Thank you. I just, excuse me. I just want to have some order here. We did start. Look, you may hear questions, you may hear answers you don't like the answers for. The candidates are here to voice their opinion. You're here to voice your opinion. Let's keep it cordial and let's move through this process. We can ask more questions. You can get down to the details for these candidates. They're not scared to answer the questions. Let them answer the questions because we need to hear what they say so you can make an informed decision. You may not agree with it. You may not. So therefore, I will come back to it. I will come back.
They say 6 sentences.
Okay. I will come back to it. Neither Shanell or Calvin have directly answered the question. I'll pull them up on it again. I'll give Tara the opportunity, and I will come back. So please allow the chair, me and Shafi, to do our jobs. We know what we're doing. Please have some respect. Shafi did tell everyone to keep calm. No, I mean, in terms of court, look, if you're going to ask a question, raise your hands. You can submit your question. So I can give you an opportunity to ask a question later. It's not a problem. Yeah? So, Tara, let me finish this.
Yeah, so with the situation that's been going on between Israel and Palestine, back in November 2023, the Liberal Democrats called for a ceasefire immediately. We're still calling for an immediate ceasefire because the reality is a ceasefire needs to happen so that we can actually have conversations. I don't believe that there's a military solution to this problem. The humanitarian aid needs to be allowed into Palestine to help the people there, and it's been blocked, and there's been a lot of problems that have been going on with that, and we need to solve that. As well, the hostages do need to be released as well. With our policy with the arms sales that are happening to Israel, those also need to be stopped, and we would look to stop arms sales there. We believe very strongly in a two-state solution for Israel and Palestine along the previously agreed 1967 borders. We need a safe place in the Middle East for the state, a recognized state of Palestine, as well as for the people of Israel too. That's our stance on it at the minute. We would also uphold the international court arrest warrants for both the current leaders of Israel and for the leaders of Hamas as well. So yeah, it's honestly, it's so upsetting seeing what's going on, and the sooner we can stop it, the better for everybody. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Tara. Candidates, thank you. Candidates, I did say in the beginning, we'll try to answer the questions as directly as possible. I'd like to put it back to you because there's one thing that's not been answered. The question was, do you believe Israel is committing a genocide? So can we put it as a yes or a no for each of you, please, Tara?
Yes.
Yes, Shanell?
Yeah.
Calvin? Yes or no, please?
No, this is not being a politician. This is being a human being. This is being a human being. I have in front of me the transcript from the International Court, the International Criminal Court.
Calvin, I must afford you a yes or no.
No, entirely. But the problem with genocide, or the language of genocide, and this is important, is that it belies the number of people that are killed.
Okay, thank you.
Because even if the ICC or the ICJ come out and say that it's not, and they're waiting,
thank you.
That doesn't
Thank you, Mr.
mean,
Lee, I'll cut you off
that
now.
doesn't mean
Thank you.
that we shouldn't take the responses or the actions that are
Thank you.
deserving.
Thank you. I would request you stop now.
of
Thank you.
humanity.
It was a yes or no. Thank you. The correct candidates, I cannot force them to answer the question. You have got the answers, what you received. Please, you'll take that from there. So we're going to move on to the next question. And we are going to go to... Where are we going? Okay.
Is Sister Noreen here?
Yes.
Yes. Do you mind to ask a question, please?
Hi, good evening. I would like to ask, what is your timeline and strategy to deliver the new Whips Cross Hospital?
We'll ask Tara.
So I'll just respond.
Okay, yeah.
So what's your timeline to deliver Whips Cross Hospital? We're trying to be fair in who we give the opportunity. It'll be Shanell first, sorry. Beg your pardon.
I think actually it's probably
Oh, is it?
Calvin, probably.
Calvin first. Okay.
Calvin first.
Sorry.
Sure. So Whips Cross. So Whips Cross Hospital is the heart of our community. It's the heart of the constituency. For 25 years, that hospital hasn't, or the failings in that hospital, the lack of investment, just simply haven't been addressed. There has been many politicians that have gone in front of it, and it is only a government of power that can actually commit to you and say that it is going to do something to address it. And unfortunately, the Conservative Party haven't done that. If we are in power, West Streeting has committed to rebuilding the hospital, and we must get shovels in the ground. It's a complex plan, there is a lot of sequencing, but that we will hold into account because we have to. Like, it is beyond just a nicety. This is absolutely fundamental. The place is an absolute disgrace. So immediately, once we've already made the public commitment to it, and those plans will go and train. What the actual minutiae of the plans, I'm not sure, but as only a party of power can commit that to you, and that's what we've done. That's as much as we've done at the moment. Does that answer your question?
Thank you.
So, from what I've read, the timeline to deliver it is 2030, and I don't know if that's going to be possible. Now, I'm a construction professional, and I can tell you right now, the bits that have gone wrong already are things like the stakeholder engagement. There hasn't been enough engagement with the community, there hasn't been enough engagement with the staff at the hospital, and there definitely hasn't been enough engagement with the people who have said, keep the Margaret Centre open. So, for me, as a construction professional, I'll be championing those things because it's so important that we actually listen to the things that people need. We shouldn't be having the strikes that we're having and the doctors feeling undermined by the system. They should be part and parcel of what we need at Whips Cross. It's so key. It's one of the few things that we have actually had cross-party support on. You saw Ian Duncan Smith standing next to John Cryer about this very same issue. And I will make sure that we continue to have cross-party support on it because it's our hospital and we can't forget that.
So quite a few things have gone wrong with the redevelopment of Whips Cross. One of them being the fact that there hasn't been a lot of proper public consultation. The proposed plans have a reduction in services. The Margaret Centre and the Connaught Day Hospital being closed is unacceptable. Those are services that we need to keep for the community. Also, the reduction in beds is just, again, unacceptable. Why are we reducing space in a hospital when we have such a beautiful growing community coming in? We need to make sure that this hospital is future-proof, that it's fit for the people who will be coming into this, whether it's our children, whether it's new people moving into the area. Reducing the services and the space in the hospital is just not a way to do that. As well, the reality is that the funding needs to be expanded and it needs to be released as soon as possible. We need to be getting shovels into the ground to try and build this hospital so that it actually works for the community, because right now it's not working. It's one of the key issues that's been coming up on the doors. People are struggling. I'm hearing about waiting times in A&E, people feeling like they're not able to see the emergency services not able to see doctors when they need to, and that's so critical to a healthy and strong community. So it would be yes, exactly, which is just unacceptable. If you've gone to A&E, it's because you're in dire need of help. So we really need to just make sure that we get this going as soon as possible, but it needs to be a hospital that works for us.
Okay, we're going to move on to another pre-submitted question. I've got Mr. Harris.
Hi, good evening. Very nice to see you all. I think I have to preface the question with what's been going on for the last 9 months. There's an ongoing live stream genocide that we've all been watching. I don't want to look at the question of consistency, but this is very, very important. The conversations that we've been having in our communities is the duplicity of the Labour Party. How, sorry, not meaning to single you out, but that's a fact. The fact that you haven't stood up to any form of resistance, or you haven't mentioned anything in relation to what's going on, other than the fact that you've been shamed into saying whether it's a Bengali issue or whether it's to say that we should stop, we should have a ceasefire, only when it's at the last minute. The point really being now is that Gaza is pulverized, there's no hope, there's a famine that's going on at the moment, there's an election that's happening tomorrow. All eyes are now currently off the West Bank, and there's incursions on there on a daily basis, land grabs on a daily basis, expansionism on a daily basis, every breach of United Nations protocols, all laws have been abrogated. What the question really is, and I had to preface it, really is, what are you going to do? And I don't really want to include Labour because it's just the duplicitous nature of what you are in terms of as a political party and an organisation, but perhaps to the other two, is what are you going to do in the corridors of power when you're there, either for your party, you're an independent, or maybe you as a Liberal Democrat, to focus the issue on these points which are fundamental to human sanctity, and they supersede all other issues that we may discuss today at this hustings. Thank you very much.
I'm going to summarise the question to what was submitted in, which was actually, what is your stance? Because it's linked. So if I can read from that circle, yeah. So because he's given some context, but this question specifically submitted in was, what's your stance on Israeli settlement expansion in the West Bank, and how will you address it, Tara?
So as I said previously, the Liberal Democrats have been at the forefront of this issue, calling for a ceasefire. And I sort of alluded to it a little. Well, I think I said it quite clearly in my first answer, but. Is that basically when it comes to the recognized state of Palestine and the state of Israel, it's that we would look for a two-state solution along the 1967 border. So that would be our solution to that problem. And in terms of humanitarian aid and that sort of thing, and the struggles that have been going on in there, again, we need a ceasefire just to ensure that we can get that aid in so that we can help people.
Sorry, you didn't really address the question. The question was about expansionism into the West.
So I'll repeat the question. So everyone's understood. So the question is, what is your stance on Israeli settlement expansion in the West Bank, and how will you address it?
So that's sort of what I'm saying with the two-state solution and where the border would be is, again, like I said, the agreed 1967 border. And again, we need a ceasefire so that we can sit down and have those conversations and actually get that out and make sure that that's our two-state solution for that.
Thank you. Calvin, please.
So, thank you. I would challenge the premise of the question, because clearly there is some upset with our party, and that's why at the beginning I explained how we would go about, or how I would go about addressing that. So fundamental to that, and what happened last week, there is something that I can clearly evidence. That is something I spoke up about within the party when it happened. It's something that I represented within the party, and it's something that we saw a response on. I think also, without going too far into the complexities of things, and that's why I do have the legal documents and the ICC and the ICJ documents, because I can draw on their language directly. And even though I note a moment ago, I said exactly the same thing as some of the people next to me said, I've been challenged on it as though I was lying. I'm not. Fundamental to peace And there might be, we might have, or we might think that we have a better notion of peace. But the best notion has to be that the Palestinian people have their own state. And those two states must coexist. And the way the international system, so the ICC fundamentally, is about countries dealing with countries. And if you read the response from the ICC about the crimes that have been committed, and there has been a lot of crimes committed, and they have been levelled at Israel, and they're within the document, and I can read them all to you. The reason why it's important that we have to do that is that we have to offer those people the opportunity and the protections of a state. And if we don't do that, if we don't lobby for that, if we don't make that the case, we just can't have peace. And that's why I said, and we'll reiterate, that fundamental to any peace process, starting with a ceasefire, which we've called for, regardless of when it was done, if we come into power, we must work to get a ceasefire, but we must work to a two-state solution.
Okay, so I'm going to just try and answer you directly as I can, okay? The recognition of a sovereign state of Palestine, okay? We need to end the illegal occupation of Gaza and the West Bank, because for too long, we've seen a state that looks somewhat like the apartheid era, and it's got to stop. Because when you're living under those conditions, you will never find peace. Because how will you feel peace when you are put at the very forefront of having the opportunity to have your water stopped? That is not peace. And I'm sorry, that anybody who is human and has a humanitarian bone in their body should be able to see that that is not peace. Those people that are living now, I read somewhere that it's going to take more than 10 years before they find all the bodies that are under that rubble. We cannot be okay with that. We cannot be complicit with that.
Scientifically proven 3 times of Hiroshima have been dropped on Gaza. The weapons that dropped on Gaza is equivalent to 3 Hiroshimas.
Thank you.
We cannot be okay with that. And this brings, I'm glad you said that, sir, because it brings me to the very point under which both the ICJ and the ICC said that we have to hold Israel to account for the breaches of the international humanitarian law. So that is what we should be doing. Here in the UK, we should be following that. We shouldn't be supplying arms. And this is why I was at Divest Now last week, speaking up, saying we should not be complicit. We should not have our pensions linked to companies that are supplying arms that are killing children innocently.
Thank you. Shall I do? I'm going to go to another pre-submitted question. I just want to remind the candidates, if we can try to answer as direct as we can. There is feeling coming through that some candidates are not asking directly. If we can answer the questions direct as is. I know it's difficult sometimes. I know there's context you have to give to it. It's not the easiest, but that's what your audience wants. That's what your constituents want. Please give them what they want. Okay. We're going to move on to now a pre-submitted question by Mr. Brother Khalid.
Yes, sir. I've got a local question, but I'm not going to bother myself with international because we're not going to get the answers. What measures will you take to address the crime rates in our area, including open drugs use and sell, and the antisocial behaviour, including stabbing? And I will direct this to the Labour Party and Carvin. In your previous manifesto and the 5 key pillars that you pledged for the vote of the 16 and 17-year-old, how far are you to address that, or are you on target to implement that?
Thank you. So the question, just for the audience purposes, what measures will you take to address the open drug use and antisocial behaviour in our community? I'd like to start with Shanell then, please.
Okay, so I actually stood up in the chamber and I raised the policy development work needed for knife crime. Do you want me to tell you what happened to me? I had a complaint put into me because I spoke out and said that what we were doing was not sufficient and they didn't want to put it on the agenda. So I will bring that back to the table again because I'm sorry, too many children, when there is a stabbing, it affects not just the child that is stabbed, it also affects the family that have actually had a child in their family that has done that heinous crime. We must do something more about it. Why is it that our children feel that they are not safe, that they feel the need to carry these weapons in the first place? This is a community problem. It affects every single one of us when children are dying on our streets. When it comes down to the drugs, community policing has gone completely awry. We've seen it here. I've got Christine here. I ran an event with Christine at Pastures Youth Centre where we actually had children at that event, children and young people who had been stopped and searched, targeted, stopped and searched, time and time again. Many of them had nothing on them, but then they felt victimised and they had no outlet for it. That meant that where's their safety net? If they're not then feeling safe on the street with other people like themselves, and they're also feeling that they should fear the police, we have gone too far wrong. And fundamentally, this is where it's flawed. We as a community can bring it back again because we can show our children that we care, and we can actually ensure that there are policies and procedures in place to support children when they're actually coming up to being at risk. And this is what we've seen fall short, which is why we don't have any more youth centres anymore. We don't have any more safe places and spaces for our children. They've all got to come back.
Yeah, so again, crime is something that comes up all the time, and I can understand because some of the stories that I hear from the local community is quite upsetting. The amount of break-ins, the people finding people taking drugs in their backyard and that sort of thing, and I understand it's a serious issue. The reality is that in terms of policing, there is no local police service here. The closest one is in Chingford. And what bringing back a local police would bring is, people who you're familiar with, officers who you trust and who you know, because that's a huge thing as well, is there's such a lack of trust in policing at the minute, unfortunately. A lot of stuff has come out from the Met, and I can understand why. So it's really trying to rebuild that relationship within the community and the police force. In terms of drug taking, we look at drugs as a health issue at the core of it. So that means that we need to sort out treatment centers. We need to look at the root cause of drug addiction and making sure that we're treating people for these so that they don't fall into that spiral of addiction where it becomes so consuming in that way. Again, with knife crime we would want to address as a public health issue. And so that means going to the heart of the problem and focusing on it in a community-centered way. So that means making sure that we have those safe places for our young people to go, like those youth centers which have been being closed down. It also means working with teachers, community leaders, families, and of course young people themselves to work out why they don't feel safe, why they feel that carrying a knife is the way that they need to feel safe on the streets, and making sure that we're really getting to the heart of the problem.
Thank you. Kevin.
Thanks for the question. I know it's posited straight at me. It might be because, you may have read about, so my background, I grew up in Woolwich. My friend's brother was Stephen Lawrence, and murder by knife crime is something that's particularly impacted me as I grew up. There was 5 murders in and around the area when I was a kid. The one that everyone remembers is Stephen Lawrence. I lost a friend and a friend's brother, and it's something that I'm quite passionate about. So this is what I pointed to in the start when I started talking about things that we have to address. What am I going to do about it, or what are we going to do about it, or indeed doing about it at the moment? So today, this lunchtime, I met with the area commanders after being out in some of the parks earlier in the week. We know that separate, we'll come back onto knife crime. We know that open drug use is a societal problem. It manifests as a failure. The people that we get into the programs to help them out of drug use fall back into drug use because the councils don't have the money, because the government stripped out billions of pounds from our local councils, and as a result they can't deal with the social problem. If you go and see the police officers, and I've been out with them twice in the last month, and I know that they, and if we at a lower level speak to them directly, which I have, they just simply don't have the resource. And that is why we address the problem in Leyton, and it pops up in Leytonstone. We address it in Leytonstone, it pops up in Wanstead, and it's moving around. Until such time as we have additional police resources, we won't be able to underwrite it and fix that problem. Just quickly on the knives, we'll ban the online use. There's fairly direct policy about it. You can still go and buy ninja knives and other kind of craziness. The swords that we're using in the Roman case, those things will be banned. There'll be ID and checks and enforcement. This is a big, big issue for us, and it's something I'm very passionate about.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
I think you highlighted one thing in there, and three of you touched on the basic thing. We need to go back to basic, and the basic that we're missing here is you will not be able, none of you will be able, not even parties will be able to do anything without getting engaged with the community.
100%.
This community will be helping you in knife crimes, will be helping you in the drug. If you open the youth centres, if you get the community engaged in youth centres, none of this will happen.
Thank you, Brother Hamid. Thank you very much. Thank you. We will be going to another preset questions, which we pre-submitted questions by Brother Muhammad Khan.
Yeah, thank you. Going back to the topic of Gaza, Alvin, you mentioned you've got both the ICJ ruling and ICC in front of you. My question is that they've already said it's a plausible genocide. They've already said there's more crimes going on. What practical steps will you take in government to make sure that reinforces?
Thank you. Who's first? Yeah, Calvin?
Okay. So the reason why I'm quite keen and directed off this, and I've read it, and I have read and understood it, is because fundamentally this is really important. It is really important. Even if you think that I'm being duplicitous, or you think that I'm taking it from different angles, I'm not. It's right in front of me. The language is very important. If we believe in a rules-based international order, and I can show like a long history of my engagement in these things, we must underwrite and enforce these organisations, and what we must not do is we must not act in a way that inhibits them from doing their job. Now that will be, let me finish please just for a second, that will be absolutely, and that's why David Lamay has made a very clear statement about this, and I'll need to make sure that we underwrite the ICC and the ICCJ rulings and that we support them. He also said in his statement that we know that some of the non-signatories may be slightly problematic. He's quite clear about this. We know that all nations haven't signed up to the ICC. That is something that we as a country are going to have to face, and that we are going to have to draw a coalition of nations to make sure that this is addressed properly, because not every nation stands up to the ICC. We do. We will make sure that we support the outcomes that they agree.
You're not giving a single practical step.
I am, but I really am. That is a practical step. The foreign minister is going to underwrite the ICC and the ICCJ. We are going to support what they do. There literally is nothing more we can do. There is actually nothing more that this country can do.
Sanctions.
You asked me what we could do to support the ICC and the ICCJ. I've answered that. I've also pointed to the reviews of weapon sales, and to make sure that none of our weapons are used contrary to anything in the ICC or ICCJ statement.
Why would you supply?
There's literally nothing more we can do.
Thank you, Shanell.
Thank you, Sharon.
Okay, so I'm going to try and be as clear as I can. So call for an immediate ceasefire first, and then call for the immediate release of the hostages that are held in Gaza, and that includes the people that are held that are political prisoners that are being held in the West Bank. Allow access for aid organisations, especially aid organisations that can then be protected to do the job that they need to do, and especially when it comes down to companies like Doctors Without Borders, because I've seen some horrific videos of people having to do operations without correct anaesthetic, and it scares me. So I would call for that as well. I would look to push for direct and open, safe routes for refugees, especially children, here to the UK, the same as what we did for Ukraine, especially children that have been orphaned and have no parents anymore. The same way that we opened our homes for Ukrainian children, we should be able to do exactly the same thing, and especially children that need medical assistance. Now, we have overseas territories that also might be able to help, so that's like the Cyprus Air Base or Gibraltar. There are some clear things that we can do and that we can push for as a community to show comparity, sorry, you know what I'm talking about, but to compare and to do the same as what we did for Ukraine as for the children of Gaza.
Thank you.
Okay. Sorry, pardon me. So yes, calling for an immediate ceasefire first and foremost, because the fighting just needs to stop. Then part of that is just making sure that we're no longer selling arms to Israel, right? So that would also be something that we would want to bring in. In terms of the international court rulings, it would be making sure that we're upholding those and that we're working with our international partners to uncover everything that's going on and making sure that anybody who's been committing any crimes is being held to account in line with international law. So that would be some practical steps that I would work with my party in regards to the international court rulings, which I believe is the question.
Okay, guys, we've got two more pre-submitted questions, and then we're going to move on to opening up for the audience. So if audience members do have some questions, start thinking about them, and I can come to you shortly. But we're going to carry on about. We've got 2 or 3 more pre-submitted questions. So I'm going to move on to now Mr. Mehdat, please.
Thank you very much for coming, even though in the eve of the election. As a local, and I'm always historically Labour voter, okay, Mr. John Carra used to come and say, I don't want to see this, occasionally before election. Okay, and I personally approached him for a few times with issues that's happening in the area and hasn't been resolved. One of them is going back to 2008. Okay, I'm councillor there, you know it, and still going, hasn't been resolved. And actually, because he's not a local, okay, he wasn't local, okay, and I was expecting really to see our local councillor, Keith, candidate as a Labour, because he has served the whole area for 30 years, and everybody agree with me. He has served the area for 30 years. So my direct question, I wrote it down, so what's going on? Okay, how connected, connected are you with the local community? And how will you ensure an effective representation for local concern? Because we have so many, okay? In my street now, okay, and I will tell Keith, okay, there's a house that since 2008, we are frightened to get out. Okay, it has a demolition order since 2008. Okay, it's illegally built. And now it's a drug hub during the day, prostitution in the evening, okay, knife, and I called the police a couple of days and I've got a CAD number, okay, and nothing is happening. Council are not doing anything, okay, our MD is not doing anything, okay, and we haven't had anything for Labour, so why should, trust you? So we need to have, please clear.
Thank you. So, I'll repeat the question for everyone. So the question is, how connected are you each with the local community, and how will you ensure effective representation for local concerns? Tara.
So as I mentioned in my opening remarks, I've been around in the local area for the last couple of years, first as a player and captain for Leyton Wanstead women's team, and then also with the local Liberal Democrat team. I've been in the community, I've heard a lot of your concerns, and what you raised about not being listened to by your own MP is something that I've heard from a lot of other residents as well. And I live in London, I'm very tied to the area, and I think it's important that you do spend time in the area that you're representing, that you're here listening to people, that you're here seeing what's going on in the local community. And that's something that I would endeavor to do. I want to be accessible to you, I want you to be able to reach me, and I want to be able to work hard to resolve any issues that you bring to me, whether that's working from the parliamentary level or whether that's working in conjunction with the local council to resolve things. I'm here for you, I'm here to represent you in Parliament, and also just as somebody who you can come to. And that's something that is very, very important to me.
Thank you.
So I live here. I've lived here for more than 30 years. If you guys have had any of my leaflets through your door, that address is the HQ, that's my home address. So that just gives you a sense of the fact that I've been here. There's people in the audience that I've done projects with, that I've seen and done a lot of things in the community with. But it's more than that. The whole model that I'm asking us to take part in is called the Assemblies model. It's that for a reason, because we haven't been listened to. I've sat in the council when I've felt silenced too, and that's as a councillor. So you can imagine if I'm in the council and I'm feeling that I'm not being listened to, what contempt are they holding you with? And that's the model that I want to change. I want to bring back the listening. I want to make sure that we use the assembly model. And the way that we use the assembly model is that we have these meetings in these places, in these spaces. So on your street, there's nothing stopping us from having a local assembly where we can sort out the problem. Because there are some things that we can do as a community that might have a better approach than by us asking for the council to do it, because we know what the issues are that are affecting us, and if we galvanise and we come together, we're stronger, because one finger can do nothing, but a complete fist and a whole community can do a hell of a lot.
Yeah, so there's two parts to that question, right? So the first part is how connected do I feel as part of the community? It's amusing that almost a month ago, the reason why I was coming here in May was to do some outreach at Leyton Orient Football Club, because I've been coming here for a long time doing outreach as a Royal Air Force officer, and I did it during COVID at some of the local youth groups, and I've done it across London. Because when you are a military officer, you are taken away, or when you're in the military, you are taken away from your communities and you are dispersed. Now, when I arrived with my family from Zambia in Wanstead, they probably asked my parents the same questions. And when I finished my military service, I've chosen to spend it here. And this is where I will be, and it's where I will be an effective leader within the community. With regard to your case, that particular case, I can't answer for John. What I can say is that I know that case because your councillors and I spoke about it today. I know the reasons why it took, and Sally will tell you because we went through the case. There is an injunction against that house. There is a number of, and you'll see them nodding,
Since
because
2008.
Since 2008. And I know all the red tape and all of the problems. I know the individual that we are trying to get to leverage over with that house.
This rented to the council.
I absolutely know. And I went through, and entirely.
So why is there investigation?
Because I do not, you're entirely right, and I feel your frustrations. I do not hold those levers, but I do know your case. I do know many of the other cases that happen here, and I will be out and engage with you, because that's what I was doing, even though I wasn't planning, but even though we didn't know about this taking place this evening. And if I can get into that level of detail, and I can help to address those problems, some of them are really difficult legal problems, but I've taken them back, and I've written back, and Keith will say I've been back to the doors where people raise that with me, written in hand and put those letters through. That is as much as I can do, and I will continue to do.
Thank you.
Okay, we've come to the last pre-submitted question. So before we ask that, I will ask again, if you do have some questions, start thinking about them, and we'll come to you next. So the final question is from Mr. Riaz. Please.
Calvin, my question is really specifically targeted for yourself, because and again, I'm going to take you back to a situation that concerns a lot of listeners and non-listeners, given the current situation that we're experiencing in Gaza. And I suppose what we want to do is get a bit of a personal opinion, because I think that's quite important for everybody here who may consider voting for you guys, although I think a lot of people might be a bit challenging. So given the heavy criticism across the globe of the Israeli government's gross violations of human rights against the Palestinian people and the civilian population, particularly women and children, and the ongoing slaughter of innocent people, what is your personal position on the BDS movement for the government's attempt to expand the US's anti-BDS laws, which they introduced? And we know that Labour tried to, or at least would support them. I suppose my question to you is, would you support the BDS, anti-BDS movement? Or would you stand up for justice and say, well, actually, people should be allowed to boycott, where they think there are gross human rights violations going on.
Although the question was to Calvin, it's to all the panelists. We're going to be this. So yeah, no, that's fine, perfectly fine. That's good. But we're going to, because we've got an order of people speaking. So I think on this one it is Shanell. So BDS laws.
Yeah, so I know that question was aimed at Calvin, but the whole point of standing as an independent is that I can do what our community wants us to do. So we would hold an assembly and you would tell me what you want me to do, and that's exactly what I would do. So whatever the consensus is exactly what I'll be doing for you here at Leyton Wanstead.
Calvin, you can answer now.
So I think we're going to revisit, and this is not, we're going to revisit a number of things a number of times. And the reason why I came in with the paper, and I can read it, I really don't want to, because it's very clear that these things are more than violations, these are criminal acts. They are written in here as criminal acts, and they have been offered forward. There is like great detail in this, and it is not, and I'm at no point making any apology for this. The detail is heinous. These things are very detailed, but without being a party of power, without actually being able to, the accusation earlier was that by supporting the ICC and the ICJ that we weren't doing enough. We are. That is the vehicle by which we will deliver justice. It has to be, because there isn't anything else.
Calvin, I'm going to give you a couple more minutes on here because you do, because I'm going to come back. The question, I've got the question written here, so we're going to get a clear answer.
Heavy criticism of gross violation and ongoing support to the BDS movement.
I'm going to give you more time because the question, because I've got the pre-submit, the question, I'll read it out to you so you're clear. It's about BDS. So what the question is here?
So do you want to expand on the enactment?
Do you want me to answer it? I've got, because it's pre-submitted.
We'll expand to just make sure, because there's a lot of people in the room. No, because like it's very. We are recording.
I'll tell you what we'll do. I'll read the question out again, and we're going to get a clear answer. Okay. Everyone, listen to this.
benefit of everyone, tell them what the BDS is.
Okay. Calvin, do you tell us what the BDS is? No,
because
Riaz, can you do the question answer? Can you stand up and just explain and give context? Someone did ask me here, and I'd rather you explain.
So this is the boycott and divestment movement, right? And there's a specific movement which is specifically targeting anything that's coming out of the conflict zone, basically, anything related, whether that's a company linked to it, whether it's production, whether it's manufacture of weapons, any sort of commercial link. The hope is that if people can pull together as communities, as people, and act together to try and pull away the funding, then perhaps governments will listen, and institutions and corporates particularly will take action.
The question was the Labour Party.
Hang on.
If we can respect the chair. Calvin, if we can respect the chair, please. Calvin, if we can respect the chair, please. If we can respect the chair, please. Okay, because it's a bit of a technical question, so we've got to afford the candidates the respect to appreciate the question, okay? So we've got to be fair here. I'm going to read it out because you've given me a submitted word for word, and I want to read it out word for word. Okay. Given the heavy criticism across the globe of Israeli government's gross violation of human rights against the Palestinian people and the ongoing slaughter of innocent civilians, what is your personal position on the BDS movement and the government's attempt to expand the anti-BDS laws, which Labour also support? Would you go along with your party's current stance to support the banning of boycotting, or would you have the courage to stand up for justice and walk across the floor or resign? Because that's your actual question. And I've got to be clear because I've got to honour and respect the show. So, Calvin, that's the question. Your 2 minutes starts now.
Right. Hang on. We've already gone into this. We've already gone back into
Floor is yours.
And that wasn't. I didn't see the same treatment of the previous answer, which didn't even touch.
I'm going to come back to
BDS. Let's be fair, because there has been a number of things. I've been writing them down where actually in asking of our questions we've gone back. The reason why I wouldn't explain and won't explain what BDS is, because we have to go, if I say BDS, you don't know what, BDS means something else to me. And it's important that that is delivered as part of the question. So it's not trying to avoid something, it's trying to make sure that we aren't drawn when we're being recorded or when we're talking about things. And unfortunately, that is part of the difficulty with politics, because things will be put to people and they will posit different solutions or different answers based on what's given to us. So that's kind of where we were. To go back to where we were in terms of these things, part of, and I was quite clear in my opening about how we wouldn't always be aligned on certain things, and the thing that I will bring that is quite important about being part of the Labour Party is it's part of the Labour Party. It's important that I have a voice within the Labour Party to adjust Labour Party's position. If I break that, and when there may be occasions where I choose to, where I have to, where there are positions of like overwhelmed, I think the party isn't, like, we are literally not going to get to this, that might be a position that I find myself in, and at that moment I may have to break with it. But the important part with parties is they are parts, they're consensus parties. Until we have single transferable vote or the alternate voting system, that is the way our parties work. It's not elegant, and that's why I said at the beginning, this is why politics and politicians appear to fail you, because we have to work to consensus in order to have and actually deliver something that we can, because there is no other way of doing it. A voice on your own, as much as I love Shanell, a voice on your own can't deliver that.
Thank you. I will.
Last question, your personal position, and that was the.
Okay, my brother.
I think we can't push a candidate more. Look, you've been clear. If the candidate wants to give an answer, they have the right to give the answer they want to. But I do take it. I didn't push Shanell as much as I should have, so I'm going to bring her back and give her another minute or so. Tara, I haven't got you. So Shanell, back on the BDS specifically, can you come back to it?
On the BDS specifically, okay, I was talking at the Divest Now. That just tells you exactly where I stand. I stood outside the town hall and protest with Divest Now and asking them to take our pensions away from the arms trade. So I'm doing it. That's exactly where I stand.
Yeah.
So I want to be crystal clear. I'm doing it. And just to finish off, what I said to you was that we would hold the assemblies where you would come and tell me, and this is not me standing on my own, this is me standing for my community.
As I've mentioned a couple of times, so we would want to end arms sales to Israel. That would also include divesting from pensions and that sort of thing that are feeding into arms sales to Israel. As well, in terms of other boycotts, divestments and sanctions, that's something that could potentially be looked at alongside myself and my other Liberal Democrat colleagues in Parliament. So that's sort of where I stand. It's something that is potential, but yeah.
Okay. Audience members. So, I had assumed that we wouldn't have got to this stage where I can open up the audience, because I thought we'd be done by 9:30, but I'm glad we've got here and we've got an opportunity to now open up the floor. A couple of points on opening up the floor. Of course, the pre-submitted questions are easy for me. I know what's about to be said, and so I can reiterate and I can speak about it. I just want to be clear, we must make our questions quite clear and concise. I'm happy for context, it's not a problem, because some of the themes are quite complex. But please be clear in your questions and concise. If you're expecting a clear and concise answer back, you've got to come with a clear question. So we'll do it in a very simple way, raising by hands. Please be patient, and I'll go, because the gentleman over there had his hand first. I'm going to go with you, sir, instead. If you'd like to stand up and ask your question, please. Thank you.
I want to ask about housing.
Yep.
Specifically rented accommodation, the level of the level. I'd like to ask the candidates what they would do to bring about fundamental change in the relationship of landlords and tenants. Would they consider the introduction of rent control, statutory rent control? Would they consider the introduction of statutory obligations on landlords to maintain properties at a decent level? I have two daughters that live in rented accommodation, and the amount of rent they pay is eye-watering. It's absolutely eye-watering. And they rely on a combination of part-time wages and universal credit. What they pay in rent is more than twice what I paid on a mortgage for a house twice the size of their bloody flats. So what would you specifically do about accommodation? That also includes the building of a considerable number of social housing.
Thank you. Thanks, sir.
Thank you for that question. I think I mentioned before that I work in the building trade, so I'm not hiding that, okay? Which also means that I have a more intimate knowledge with what we should and shouldn't be doing. And I'm definitely against micro homes. You've seen it happen over at Snaresbrook Car Park, where the homes they were building were 37 square metres. It's tiny, and they were saying that it's affordable. What, at £370,000? I don't think so. So there's a lot there that needs to be done, and because I work in the industry, I'm better placed to help unpick it. But you've got things that you mentioned there about the housing and the rent, and then also the landlord and the tenants. We need to actually build these relationships better, because within our community, you've got both. You've got landlords, you've got tenants, you've got renters, you've got a whole plethora of people. When we sit down together at an assembly, we can actually thrash out every single issue, and you can hear it from both sides. And the reason I say that is because we held an assembly yesterday and we had opposing arguments, but we came to a consensus, which is what Kelvin just said we couldn't do. It can be done. We can come to a level of agreement within ourselves at what good should look like, because there is under no circumstances that we shouldn't be in a position to continue to raise our families within this community. It's not good enough that people are put at risk and they feel that their safety and their tenancy security is at risk. That's not the community I want to grow up in. That's not the community that children feel safe in, and we can do better than that.
Thank you, Shanell. Kelvin, please.
Thank you. So I alluded to a question earlier, and that's why what I was doing earlier was talking to Keith, your councillor, someone you trust in and invest in, and we spent a number of time, we've had a number of engagements over the last couple of days working out how or where the shortfalls are in the money that has been provisioned to 5 projects within the constituency. And we know that there is an inadequate amount of money there, and in particular we've got to do some active engagements with the likes of Wigan Walsh, where we have just underinvested for literally generations. Fundamentally, the problem comes because we sold council houses, well, not we, the Conservative Party sold council houses off in the 80s, and fundamentally we have to address that. The average rents around here are far in excess of what people would be paying for a mortgage, and it's those things that act as a barrier to our children remaining within the communities that they grew up in. That's why within the manifesto there's a pledge for 1.5 million new homes, and it's why we've got to make sure that that investment is passed through the GLA, that was Greater London Authority, that's given us £500 million today to try and address some of this. But that is why we have got to empower the likes of Keith so that they can actually do these things. And it wasn't that I said that we couldn't have discussions about them. We can have discussions about how we would do these things. It's what can we materially do to actually fix them. And that is have a government of power that can link the money down to the root causes of the problem. So that's fair enough. That I didn't cover that adequately in there. That is something that isn't adequately covered in the in our manifesto. Part of that is that there is some misalignment with, and this is what Shanell pointed to, and she's entirely right, affordable housing. It's just not affordable. It's just not affordable. And if we've got these things, when we offer, and if you speak to your councillors, when we've actually, and it's in the past, because remember I'm new to all this, but in the past when we've sold off land and we've committed blocks of development, they're down as affordable, and they're not. £2,200 for controls. We've allowed building companies to come in and do that, take that money away, put 20% on it. That's not affordable. That's what's structurally wrong. So the rent controls haven't adequately discussed it. We need to understand what our definitions of things are and make sure that the model and the money that we're giving to some of these companies is adequately controlled.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Kevin.
Thank you. Tara, please.
Yeah, so housing is something that's really, really important to me. As a young person in London, I feel very acutely the struggles of high rents. I've seen every time you sign a 1-year lease, and then all of a sudden at the end of your lease, your landlord wants to raise your rent minimum £75 a month. Sometimes I've got friends of mine where their rent's gone up by about 100. And it's really hard out here. It's hard to find a place to live. It's hard to find a good quality place to live. One of the things that we would bring in for renters specifically, well, two of the things that we would bring in, which I think are really, really important, is a 3-year lease minimum. So that stops that 1 year rent goes up, 1 year rent goes up. It means then you've got at least 3 years where you're paying the same and you're not having this constant hiking every single year. Which can also lead to you having to find new roommates, sometimes you just having to find a completely new home. Because at this point in time, for young people, about 50% of our income on average goes towards rent or mortgage payments, and that's an astronomical amount. It doesn't leave a lot for you to be able to, buy food and live the rest of your life. As well, one of the things that we would do to help renters is ban no-fault evictions. So you should feel secure in your home, especially if it's rented. You should not be under threat of, being kicked out at a moment's notice. So that would be 100% one of the first things to go. But the reality is but to help control rents and to help control housing prices in general, is that we need to be building more homes, but we need to be building homes of a good quality. So we're committing to 380,000 homes per year, 150,000 of which would be social homes, but making sure that those social homes are built to a guaranteed standard so that the social homes that people will be living in are safe, clean, well-built and well-structured so that you're not having to worry about mold and damp and whether your building is going to collapse on you. So that's sort of what we'd be looking to kind of address this issue.
Thank you.
Hands up. Second row, please.
Yes, hello. So my question is about health. You've all answered your question about Whipps Cross, which is great. But I'd like to know more broadly about what your plans are for the health sector. At the moment, GP waiting lists in this area are about 6 weeks. Dentist waiting lists are even longer. And social care in particular has become extortionately expensive. It's now a charged service here. What are you going to do in order to bring health and social care costs back under control?
Kelvin first.
Yeah.
Kelvin, please.
Cool.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's right.
That's fine.
Thank you. It's a very good and important question. As I said, it's one of our key tenants. So there is, without doubt, been a rot in the NHS over the past 14 years. We've underinvested in the NHS significantly. The Labour Party is committed to 40,000 new appointments a week, and that is something that will only be done by some of the reforms in actually how contracting and delivery is done within the NHS, and we can go into great depth there, but fundamentally that is one of the things that will kick staff, having a healthier NHS. We have committed to 8,500 new NHS staff, which isn't as much as we'd like, but it's some step on the way there. Remember, I said that we're only going to talk to you about things that we can promise and deliver. In terms of dental appointments, we are up in our number of dental appointments by 7,000 a month. Sorry, that we have some absolutely staggering waiting times and almost a near absence of NHS appointments and access to NHS. There's almost no NHS provision within London. It's very, very limited, and that is as a result of the failure of contracting that has happened over the past 14 years. And that's why we are feeling the pain that we are, because those services have been massively under-resourced and will be quite, require a significant amount of address.
Thank you,
Thank you. Charlotte, please.
Yeah, so the NHS and care are something that's so core to our manifesto and what we as Liberal Democrats stand for. In regards to care, care is going to be a growing sector and we need to make sure that it is properly funded. We need to make sure that it is properly staffed. So we would look to recruit more staff into the care sector, but also make being a paid carer more attractive. So that means by establishing a Royal College of Care, meaning that workers then have a way of accessing, a minimum wage standard, a minimum standard of work. They have something to turn to. It's also recognizing that a lot of care work is done by unpaid carers, by children looking after their parents, parents looking after children with special educational needs, siblings looking after siblings. And we need, one of the things that's, I've been a carer for partners, for my family. I know that it's really, really difficult, and I know that it's such a huge commitment for somebody you very deeply love. And we'd be looking to make it a protected characteristic, recognizing that this is such an intrinsic part of your identity. And making sure that you're given the time off of work that you need to perform your caring duties, making sure that you're able to take your partner, your parent, your child to those hospital appointments, to those other appointments that sometimes you need to go to as well, and just the time to perform those duties. In terms of healthcare, we'd be looking to make sure that you have a 7-day guarantee of seeing a GP, 8,000 new GPs. Is what we'd be promising, and we're looking for 24 hours for an urgent care appointment with your GP as well, because the wait list is just too long. I mean, I've been waiting, I had about a 3-week wait for a doctor's appointment, just which I just managed to have yesterday. And in terms of dental care, we'd be looking to end dental deserts and make sure that you have access to emergency and urgent care with your dentist.
Thank you.
This is
no problem if you don't have a teeth.
Fair enough. No.
Hopefully we won't have to get that far, but
Thank you.
If you don't mind. What's happened for dentist segment, they done the dentist treatment.
Yeah.
And
that
treatment they want to repair.
Yeah.
They charge me 25 pounds. And from 25 pounds, 175 pounds, I have to pay. I said I'm not going to pay. And they don't talk to them. They want to talk to me. I said, talk to them.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Completely. I'm
broken.
56 years ago, I had a daughter.
Yeah.
Every nurse was coming outside to just say bye-bye.
Okay,
now
so
so much people, they don't want to say bye-bye.
This actually is perfectly points to my point, because it points to the fact that we've got a broken system. And I think acknowledging first that we have a broken system, and this is, all of it is not working. And what do we need to do to actually fix it? First and foremost, we've got to let our staff, NHS staff know, and let our patients know that the NHS is not for sale. So that is the first and foremost thing we've got to make sure that we're doing. This is a system that we should all be very proud of. Models all over the world are built on our NHS system. So we've got to put the pride back into the NHS service. And the way that we do that is by looking at where the inequalities are and fixing those first. So as the gentleman has just said, there's a breakdown in not just the dental care. We've got the primary care received by your daughter, you said, right? The actual first point when children are coming into the world, that's not working for us. We've got too many children that are actually dying. So we must look at that. And then also we've got an ageing population. We've got the two extremes, okay? So we've got an ageing population. With an ageing population, that means that it brings to exactly what Tara just said. You've got more and more people that are not paid to do caring work, but they're doing it because it's their families, it's their loved ones, it's their people that they feel that they have to give that care to. That's not recognised, but that also takes them out of the job market. So therein lies an unpaid job, but then those people that could be doing that work are not then doing that work in the community and not being able to contribute to the tax system. So we've got, as Calvin said, the disproportionate PFI contracts that have meant that we've already sold off massive parts of our NHS. Bring them back in-house.
Thank you.
Back to the audience, if we can show some hands. I know you've been waving at the back probably, sir, so I'll reach you.
Thank you.
Social prescribing.
Wanstead itself, obviously local residents. My question comes in two parts for all three candidates, but then there's a highlight of one of them. Will you and your party, obviously, I'm not sure now you're independent, will you and your party be stopping supplying arms to Israel and hold production of military components used against civilians? Second part is towards a Labour candidate, Calvin. Calvin, given that you are from a military background, can you kindly clarify with your military service roles and activities related to the wars in Iraq, Afghanistan and Syria? Were you active duty and operation related to these places? Thank you.
We've got Tara first.
So I'll keep it really brief and straight to the point. We would stop supplying arms to Israel. We'd also divest from pensions that are providing arms to Israel. So yeah, so yes.
Simple. Yeah. It's the same for me, and I think I've already said before that I've already been on protest and I've already spoken out about divest now.
Calvin.
Thank you again for another question at me. Which is fair. No, which is fair, and that's why. Let's be honest. This is why I said we've lost trust in certain things, and that's why I said even though we're at the last minute here, it's important for us to come in and have open discussions. But I've got nothing to hide, and we need to speak about these things. My service was my service. It was directed by all of you as members of our state who vote. I've worked for the government, for the people of this country, and it's down to us to go and do those things. That is an unfortunate truth. That is what service is. Now, if you were at the D-Day celebrations, you would see all my medals on my chest and all of the things that I'm involved with. They start with my leftmost one, which is for saving something in the order of 7,000 people in the Philippines when I went out and did a humanitarian aid operation there, and that's what I received an MBE for. The next one is for Iraq and for my contribution during the operations in Iraq between 2003 and 2007. My next medal is one for Afghanistan. You'll note the most notable part of it was for the evacuation of 14,500 people who I brought out from Afghanistan, and that's something I alluded to earlier, saying that we need to have comparable programs for the people of Palestine, and that's something that I pointed out before. The next one was for my support. He's asked for everything. He's asked for.
I'll give you more time.
He's asked for was for Iraq and Syria. So it was me that led our humanitarian operations to save 5,000 Yazidi women that were on top of Mount Sinjar. Like, I am proud of what I've done because I have done things that the nation has asked me to do for service. Unfortunately, some of those things, sometimes you might have a fracturing with those things, and I think the government grossly mishandled the withdrawal from Kabul, and that was something that I was very public about, and that's, if you've seen Evacuation on Channel 4, you'll see that that's there. So all of those things are out there. The other part of the question that you asked, which I did address earlier, and I was really specific, and I was actually noting that we were pretty much all saying the same things, but it was about weapons and how we go about dealing with our weapons, and that we must have a review. There was a fairly clear paper that went back to say that there is no transparency at the moment of what those things matter. And fundamentally, and the thing that I said right at the beginning, is more importantly, we need to stop the war. And that has been missed. And I keep saying it, and we pass over it because we like to land a point. But that is the starting position. We must stop the war.
Thank you. Calvin, I must push you on that. The question, one of the points you didn't answer, the other two candidates answered directly. They said, yes, we would stop the arms sales to Israel. What is that, yes or no for you?
So I've answered the question 3 times now, and there was also 2 parts of the question, one of which the other candidates weren't even asked to discuss anyway.
Thank
so
you.
I have answered the question 3 times.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
One more question, please.
I've given you a question. I've given you a question. I've got to go around. I've got to be fair because I've got. Yeah, I'm going to ask you. in the second row.
Thank you. Due to boundary changes, Leyton and Wanstead covers a number of diverse areas and neighbourhoods. Leyton, Leytonstone, Wanstead and South Woodford, with differences in demography and 2 local councils covering the area. Based on your experience going out to better understand the needs of the community in the constituency, what do you see are the very specific priority local issues in each part of the constituency, and how will you navigate working with 2 different councils?
Shanell first.
Okay, so thank you for that question. And because I am a local councillor, it's something that I actually know a little bit about.
Cool.
So as we said before, we've got the issues that are in Wanstead that are very different from the issues that you face over here. And because we've been having the public assemblies, we're actually beginning to see some of those differences. So just to give you a quick summary, when we had the assemblies over the last couple of days, the issues that were coming up predominantly relating to Wanstead were things around the lower traffic neighbourhoods, improving green efficiencies in the area locally, the fact that the youth centre has been closed, the issue with the W12 bus route, so I wish I had the list now, but that was sort of the Wanstead. And then on the South Woodford side of things, it was very, very different again. So people were more concerned. Health-related issues were in South Woodford quite a lot, and also the youth centre was also there. And they were worried about the overspill, which I think is what was alluded to here, the overspill of potential crime, not actual crime, potential crime. That was South Woodford. So in Leyton, and this includes bits of Leytonstone, it was a very different issue that we came across. We had drugs as one of the bigger concerns. We had knife crime as one of the bigger concerns. We had the visibility of gangs on the street as also one of the big concerns. But do you know what was really interesting about the assemblies? Everybody said the same thing about coming at it from a place of peace. So they said that if we are beginning to tackle these issues, we've got to come at it from a place of support and peace. So we also had social prescribing as one of the issues that was brought up, and like Tara said, we also had the fact that there are so many young carers, but this was more in the Leyton side of things rather than in the Wanstead areas. So that's a quick snapshot of what we found out just in the last few weeks.
Camden, please.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you. The one of the things that I would say here, because it is a really broad and very diverse constituency, the first thing that I would posit is that there is almost a lack of empathy across the constituency for each other's problems. There is the most pressing problem is food and cost of living. And some people would have seen me, and I've not advertised it, but I would have been and have been helping in the food banks. And I've been speaking to those people, and that we know that I've been in there and helping and listening and learning, because that is really, really fundamental and acute. And that is something we see across the constituency that is not visible to everyone. In and around the Leytonstone area, we see the results of the removal of funding to the council. It impacts our youth services, bizarrely, it also impacts our ability to deliver LIDOs, perhaps of interesting concern in the northern parts of the communities. However, more locally around here, antisocial behaviour is particularly impactful for people. Mostly open drug use and the social problems that come from that, but also the fact that we've got train stations that almost facilitate shoplifting and cause great issues from shoplifting. There's a tweet that we didn't put out the other day that was when I went and spoke to some of the shop owners about the closures of a certain number of shops that resulted in the decamping of loads of homeless people and has put those problems onto the streets. So there is a wide variety of problems, but the most fundamental one that impacts people here is the cost of living.
Thank you.
Yeah, so there's a couple of sort of overarching issues that have come up in all areas of the constituency. Whips Cross, of course, is probably the number one, and that covers local neighboring constituencies as well. So that's a massive issue just for the wider area. As well, crime is something that I've seen across all the different areas of the constituency coming up on the doorstep. People feeling afraid of break-ins to their outbuildings and their properties, so sheds, garages, as well as into their actual properties, their cars. We've discussed drug taking, knife crime, other antisocial behavior. That's something that we're just seeing across the area, which again needs to be addressed. I've also seen in Leyton a lot of conversation about the high road and just the congestion that happens on the high road. A lot of this due to LTNs, which I know is also an issue coming up in some other areas as well, so that's something to be looked at. As well as something that I actually was working on in the lead up over the last couple of months, is there were some issues going on in Barclay schools with school exclusions for a child wearing a Palestinian flag on his shirt. So I mean, I met with the local family. We were trying to have conversations with the school as well as with councillors and the local MPs. And just to try and address that, because being excluded from school for wearing a Palestinian flag is something that I think is unacceptable, especially when students were asked to show support for Ukrainian children, and this is what this child was trying to do for his family and for other children in Palestine. So yeah, so there's a couple of issues there that have come up across different areas.
Thank you. Okay, so you got to hand up.
Firstly, Dr. Mosquito, we were happy that I was shouting down in the assembly. But just like to preface my question, give you context so that you get the right answer. The first thing is that I had two questions. The first one is about simplicity, integrity, and real values. And the reason I asked this question is because most governments in waiting lie before they get into power. And it seems like Labour they went before they even get into power. So Sir Keir Starmer had 10 pledges when he was voted to become Labour Party leader. These were named on every single one. He's also gone on national radio and said very clearly when his shadow ministers came and backed up what he said a few hours later, that we should stop water, electricity to all the people in Gaza, and it's perfectly fine if people do it. And what happened? He again said a few days later, or a few weeks later, oh, I never said that. So we have, as a constituent, we have this real lack of belief in our political leaders. We cannot believe what they have to say. I'll give you another example. West Streeting, saying that National Health Service is fundamental to our community. Yet he said it requires major surgery, and on top of that he said, we're going to get private companies in to help with this major surgery. You just alluded to yourself that when we did that with the private sector and rent controls, it didn't work. Okay? So I can carry on going about how you also mentioned that West Streeting was your credited for your political awakening, so I would question your character, emotional intelligence around seeing who is really fit to be someone you look up to. If I move on to Ms. Johnson, the councillor, unfortunately I can't really unearth many things that you've done other than good when it comes to the BDS movement and talking to represent other constituencies. With the Dems, they failed us. They got into power, better the Conservatives,
It would need to end in a question.
and university fees came in. So now you can understand why we don't believe politicians. Why should we believe any of you?
Sorry, in a one-liner, what's the question?
Why should we believe
Okay,
any
so
of
why
you?
should we believe any of you? Calvin.
Thanks, Ruth.
I mean, Calvin first. Calvin to speak first, not
entirely. And I just
to be clear.
Just in order to do so, that's exactly I answered your question right at the beginning when I spoke about my history and why I came in here. I'm not a politician. I haven't been a politician. A month ago, if I'd come in here and wore the uniform, we would have a different relationship. The reason why I've entered politics is because I've been on the receiving side of those things. Some things are very public and visible. A lot of it isn't. One of them is very visible in the evacuation programme and my loss of trust with politicians. And that's why I entered politics. The unfortunate thing that I'm learning, and it's a really difficult thing, and I'll be quite open with you, it's a really difficult thing to go from someone, so the military have a trust rating of about 97% in our public. So 2 months ago, I literally was coming here to talk to your kids about pathways out of the community. It was me. You had all been cheering for me. And yet 2 months later, I come in a room and you posit that I'm alive and I'm untrustworthy. Like what has happened? What has happened in 2 months to change me? And I would say absolutely nothing. And the last thing I would say that is really, really important, I'll leave it out there for the other two, is that your premise right at the beginning, and you said, so that we get the right answer. The problem is politics is complex because it's about people, and there aren't right answers, and they require us to move and ebb and to actually come to consensus, because politics is about consensus. Absolutely. Politics is about consensus, and it's about being able to listen and understand. And that's why at the beginning I said, not seeking votes, coming here to start that journey again, to start the listening and start the understanding, and to make sure that we put on the path of, we start that journey. Because I accept what I said was politics and politicians have failed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Specifically about trust. So we've seen very clearly how people have lied to us. Why should we really view? Because even today, you
Thank you. I think the question is clear. The candidates have their views to answer. However they want to answer, they can answer. So if we can go to Tara, please, next.
Yeah, so I'm a Liberal Democrat because the Liberal Democrat values align very well with my values. It's very, very important to me to stay true to myself and my beliefs, and I wouldn't be a part of the Liberal Democrats if I didn't believe that was true within the party. So that's sort of where I stand in terms of why I'm a Liberal Democrat and why I've chosen them for myself. In terms of coalition, I understand that tuition fees was a massive hit. I started university, again, I'm an international student, so it was a totally different situation for me anyways, but I have a lot of friends who started in 2012 with me when the tuition fees came in, and I know there was a lot of anger about that. But I think it's really, really important to note that we also had a lot of incredible things that we did in coalition, such as free school meals for young children, reception, year 1, year 2, free school meals, we brought that in. Equal marriage, that's something that I'm very, very proud of. And that was another thing that we brought in through coalition. The thing to look at with the coalition with the Conservatives is look at what they've done now when nobody is holding them to account. Look at the chaos that has started when the Conservatives are given unfettered power with nobody there to sort of say, hey, no, let's bring it back in. Nobody that they need to negotiate with to bring things through. We were able to rein them in, and now they've just kind of run wild a little bit. So I think there's a mixed bag with the coalition, and that's sort of where I stand with that. But again, like I said, I wouldn't be a Liberal Democrat if I didn't think that they aligned well with my beliefs and my values.
Thank you.
So, thank you for what you said, because I think I need to just point to the how, okay? Because this for me is where we've actually let the side down. And I say with because I'm going to own this. Why I stepped away from Labour was because I was being ignored, and I saw Labour ignoring the people that, you know, we're here to represent. And on some of the key issues that I felt we as a community needed to actually be listened to on, one of those was around knife crime. One of those was around anti-black racism that I fundamentally saw, and you've all now seen it play out. This was 6-7 months ago. And the cherry on the cake for me, which I was not comfortable with, was the cutting off of the water and the basic human rights to Gaza. So for me, that didn't align with me. That didn't make me feel like I was living with any level of integrity. That didn't make me feel good at night. And I've got my conscience to deal with, which is why I had to take off the red rosette. It's that simple. If it doesn't align with you and you don't feel okay with it, don't keep doing it. And that's what I did. In terms of the how, and this point is so important. This is why I want to bring back the public assemblies and why we need the grassroots model. For so long, we've not been listened to, and by not being listened to, it's created more and more divisions in our community. How can we restore trust? How is that possible? Unless we're actually going to do the very fundamental thing that needs to be done, which is to stop, take account, and listen. In terms of accountability, I'm going to be here in your community. I live here. I am going to hold assemblies. I am going to have coffee mornings. I am going to make sure that we can put the just back into justice, because that's exactly where it belongs.
So we don't have much time left, maybe about 10 minutes. So if you can answer, if you can question the question either within a minute, and
Yeah. If you're happy, can we go to 1 minute?
Then
Is that
we'll
okay,
take a
guys?
couple of more questions.
So, timekeeper, you've got a 30-second warning. So we're going to go to this lady here.
I'm not sure why the Green Party representative is here. I wonder.
I can answer that, madam, for you. We did invite them, and they
want to send the representative. She can't able to come.
The candidate couldn't come. They wanted to send a representative for the candidate. We felt then it wasn't a point because they're not a major force here. So we decided to go ahead.
So I wanted to ask the others whether they think it's time for representation.
Brilliant.
And what to do if you can't get consensus.
Okay. So proportional representation. Who's going first?
Tara,
Tara, 1 minute now. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So proportional representation is something that the Liberal Democrats have been fighting for a very, very long time. The current way that the voting system works is it's not fair. Proportional representation is much more fair. And the reality is that when you disagree, when you can't find when you're struggling to find that common ground, you just got to work harder and dig deep to find it. It's about working together and making sure that you find something so that we can bring it together, and having more parties, having more discussion, having a voting system that actually works and represents us all is the way to go.
Okay, so just really quickly, proportional representation is absolutely key because there are so many voices, there are so many things that people want to say. But in terms of the point around the public assemblies, we have been doing it. And I didn't think that 33 days ago when I started this campaign that we would have actually had 3 extremely successful assemblies. We have. And do you know what was amazing about that? We did come to an agreement. So it's possible.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'll answer the question and actually put something back. Proportional representation would mean that you don't have a constituency MP, which is something that you all really have made a big deal about this evening, and something we know and understand, and I also live here in Leytonstone as well. I agree we should have proportional representation, but it's something that we need to understand. The way the proportional representation system happens is the parties rack and stack their people, and then you pick them off as they come down. So there would be no place for local politics. It will be removed. So that is something you have to make sure that you understand as part of it. Like that is actually quite fundamental to the answer to answering that question.
Thank you. I'm going to go with the gentleman in the blue t-shirt in the back, please.
Thank you. This evening, the candidates are asking us to vote for them and the privilege of representing us in Parliament. Now that means passing on our concerns and our thoughts about local, national and international issues without any prejudice. That means on occasion, you might be in a position by representing us that goes against your party's official stance. It might mean that you're going against the party whip, and that might mean that you are defying your party leader. Can you commit? Are you willing, no matter what the cost to your position personally and your future promotion, are you willing to stand against your party and put the constituency before your party? Are you willing to commit in front of this audience this evening that you will represent us completely and always before the needs of your party?
Kevin first.
It's important question, because fundamentally the reason that allows or means that I can stand here, or the Lib Dems or the Conservatives or any of the parties can stand here, is that we are part of a party and we follow the whip as much as we can, and we always seek consensus. And as I said with the issue earlier in the at the beginning, and I was right up front with it, and at the hustings last week when it happened and there was something that I objected to, I spoke within the party to make sure that that was addressed within the party, because that's how parties work. That is fundamentally how parties work. Unfortunately, that won't scratch the itch, because the idea that we can just act independently on our own and achieve 1.5 million homes a year, it's just not possible, because Calvin, standing in the Houses of Parliament, can't do that on his own. The idea that we can do 40,000 appointments every week as part of the NHS is not something I can do on my own, because Calvin doesn't have the levers to do those things.
Thank you, Calvin.
We have to.
Thank you.
That's fundamental
Shanell.
to.
Okay.
Sorry, Tara.
Sorry,
Tara.
my bad.
So yeah, I really hope that you are voting for me because my values align with yours, and those values are Liberal Democrat values. At the end of the day, it's a situation where if you were raising concerns, I would want to bring them to my colleagues and have those conversations and have those discussions and see what I could do alongside my Liberal Democrat colleagues. It's also important to note that not all votes in Parliament that we have will be party whip votes. Some of them will be votes of conscience, where I'll be able to make my decision and a decision on behalf of you in conjunction with you on a certain subject.
Let's answer the common question.
No. We've got to, sorry, no, we've got to give the respect to the candidates to answer, please.
She has an answer. She has an answer. Shanell has an answer.
She can answer it as she answered my question because I need to
Give us 1 minute.
No, I need to.
You've had a stand.
Please. The answer they answered in the Copeland and the Liberal Democrats. Don't you think that standing by the fence and not answering the question directly, because we the voters, we give you the vote, you're supposed to be the spokesperson for every person. Look across in France, the lack of politician not delivering, the lack of politician not feeling the values as a politician cost them politics. Look, Marine Le Pen. Look at that. Look at Holland. Look at Spain. It's about time that you pull your fingers out and stand for what you believe.
Thank you.
I'm going to allow Calvin to respond.
Hang on, because if we're going to go back, right, we're starting to.
20 seconds.
Hang on a second. Right, we must allow us to come back to the question. We should allow Shanell to answer the question because she's just going to bypass it. If we were to allow time to answer that question properly, it goes straight back to the STV question. And this is why I've also got a challenge with STV. STV allows the margins in. If you look at my background and some other friends in the room, I was involved in dealing with or fighting anti-racist, I led anti-racist or was part of anti-racist protests when I was a kid. Like, these things were fundamental, and I fundamentally loathe the far right. What has happened in our politics, in our country, because of some of that separating, is that we've allowed those people to masquerade as other parties, and they're starting to rise. If we fail over the next 5 years, fundamentally, if Labour fails, because it is going to be the government of power, if Labour fails, we will allow the far right in. So the most important thing to me and to my family and to everyone in this room is to make sure the far right don't raise its head. And the way that we will do that is by delivering good and honest, costed government and making pledges that we can actually deliver. Because if we don't, we will allow the far right in, and that is something that I cannot and will not allow.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm going to go back to our format, please, and I'm going to allow Shanell to come back and have a minute on this and a bit more if you need to. No. Sorry, sir. I must keep order here. That my job is to keep order, sir. With respect, please.
Okay, this is out of line now, guys. With respect, it is out of line. Okay, we stick to the format. Okay, and the question that was originally posed was what I can do. I'm not a part of a party machine. I'm simply here to represent the community, and that's the beauty of being an independent candidate. I don't have to be whipped or told what to do. You tell me what to do, and that is the complete shift.
No, sir. I've not, sir.
Boris Johnson got free travelling before 9:30 to 4 MPs. Right? Sadiq Khan took it away. Is there any chance you to explain that why did they...
Sir, I'm afraid I'm not going to take that question because it wasn't done in the correct format. I'm very sorry. I do apologise. I mean no disrespect to you. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm very sorry. We've come to the end now. We've got 5 minutes for our hard finish, as I said at the beginning. I apologise if we've not given everybody the views. We've gone through a number of questions today. They've got a big range. If you haven't been able to get your views across, I'm really sorry. One of these three candidates will be your MP, I think. So you are in a position to count them and talk to them when they do come into power. I'm going to give each candidate one more. It was going to be 2 minutes to close, but it'll be a minute now for their final thoughts. Sorry? All right, we'll give them 2 minutes each for their final closing thoughts, and hopefully we can remain silent and just respect what they say. We may not agree with everything that's been said here, but that's the point of being here today. Yeah? So I will start with Tara for your closing thought, please.
All right, so I just want to say once again, thank you all so much for taking time out of your Wednesday evening to come and listen to us and ask us all these incredible questions. There's been a lot of really important issues raised about local issues, national issues, and international issues. And it's really, really great to be in a space where we can hear your views and hopefully where we can respond. So, as I said earlier, Liberal Democrat values and beliefs are ones that are deeply aligned with me, and I hope they do with you as well. And that's why I hope that you can trust your vote to me and know that I'll stand true to that. And I'll be here to represent you, and I'll be here to listen to you. Because as I've said previously, the Conservative government has let everybody down. And we've had enough of divisive politics. We've had enough of the far shift to the right. It's time for that to stop. In terms of Labour have been in control of the area for so long, and all I'm hearing from people is frustration, feeling like they're not being listened to, feeling like issues aren't being resolved. And it's time, Labour say it's time for a change, but is it really a change if you bring them back in? What a real change would be is voting for somebody new, somebody fresh, and the Liberal Democrats and myself as a Liberal Democrat are here to bring that to you because you deserve better, and we want a fair deal for you. We want equality, we want fairness, and we want openness. And I'm hoping that you'll trust me to bring that to this community.
Thank you.
Okay, so I stood as an independent candidate to represent everybody here in the room and more. And the reason I did that is because I felt that if you was to look at the ballot paper, I wouldn't have been happy if I woke up on the 5th of July if my name wasn't on it. And the simple reason is because my solution is that we have local assemblies, and those local assemblies give us the opportunity to talk about the issues that are impacting us, every single one of the issues. That doesn't mean that I'm just going to go away. I live here, and I've lived here for more than 30 years. I'm part of this community. If it wasn't for this community, I wouldn't be the person that I am today. And I think that alone tells you my commitment to us, and my commitment to actually moving things forward in a way that works for us. And the only way that we're going to understand that is if we actually have those wider conversations that haven't been listened to. I've been a local politician, and having done that role taught me a lot. It taught me that it's not fair that we're not listening. And it taught me that my integrity had to stay intact, which meant that I had to move away from the party that I actually originally signed up with. So keep that in mind. If you want somebody that has integrity, I've already shown you that I have it. If you want somebody that is actually going to do for us locally, I will, because I live here, I'm part of this community, I'm invested in it. If you want somebody that's going to listen, I'm going to hold public assemblies so that you can be heard.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks very much. And thanks very much for everyone coming this evening. Fundamentally, democracy is about people and about communication and reciprocation amongst people. And I've said a number of times during the evening that it is about consensus and being able to talk and work within communities, because we are only a smattering of the community that is much larger than the folks here in this room this evening. That isn't always what we want to hear, but that is the truth. I'm going to go back and read what I said right at the beginning, because on a number of occasions things have been slightly missed. But I think I was fairly clear when I said the reason why we are here tonight is because politics and politicians have failed. The handling of a number of issues have left you feeling unrepresented and ignored. This I understand. I've not been a politician before. I'm someone who will listen. And I've listened tonight, and I've listened when I've been out and about. We will not always agree, but I will represent your views. As a young mixed-race man, I know the struggle of not being heard. Tonight, I'm not here to win votes, I'm here to listen and to start a journey of repair. Please try and hang on to those things. If you don't hang on to anything else. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so that brings our evening to an end. I'd like to thank all of you for coming. Some really, really good questions. I'd like to thank the candidates individually. Tough questions, guys. You've done your best to answer them. Thank you very much. So tomorrow's your day of choice. Hopefully you'll leave now here a bit more informed than you were when you first arrived. I would say one thing actually. This hustings is okay, but remember, one of the I alluded to it before. One of these lovely people are going to be elected tomorrow. Make sure you hold them to account. This shouldn't stop here from our communities. We should continue to hold our elected people to account. That's the message I would like to give you as constituents, as someone from the community. So again, a big thank you to Brother Shafi and Cann Trust for arranging this. Thank you again for you guys to attend, and let's see what those results are on Friday night. So thank you very much. Thank you. Maghrib prayers, for those who would like to attend, will be in about 5 minutes in the main hall. Everybody else, feel free to hang around for a little while, or the exits are number 4 over there. Thank you. Thank you very much for having us. You've got the sticky. It's a bit hot in there. No,